When you love yourself enough, you will attract the right person. Carl Jung. Have you ever wondered why some people seem to put in very little effort in love, yet still meet the right person? While for others, the more they love, the more they give, and the more they try to improve themselves, the more they end up with the wrong person or remain stuck in a relationship that leaves them exhausted and doubtful of who they are. Is the right person truly a matter of luck, or is there something deeper at work that you have yet to see? You unconsciously seek love as a way to fill an inner void, but when you begin to love yourself deeply enough, no longer needing someone else to validate your worth, the relationships you attract begin to change. Stay with this until the end, because what you are about to discover is not just how to meet the right person, but how to become your true self, where love is no longer a pursuit, but a meeting that happens at the right time with the right person and in alignment with who you truly are. Number 1, the nature of true self-love. There is a truth rarely spoken plainly in conversations about love. Most of what we call self-love is merely a surface layer we construct to live more easily, to be more acceptable, rather than something that reaches the core of truly being within ourselves. People speak of self-love as a positive state, a pleasant feeling, and a way of tending to oneself after wounds. But if you observe long enough, you will notice this. There are people who are very good at self-love in that sense, yet they repeat the same patterns of relationships, fall into the same emotional cycles, and still feel they must strive to be loved. The issue is not that they are not good enough, but that they have not truly touched their own essence, the place that has been concealed by the persona. From Carl Jung's perspective, the persona is not wrong. It is a necessary part of existing in society. But the problem begins when you identify yourself with it, when you can no longer distinguish who you truly are from the version of yourself you have learned to become in order to be loved. At that point, self-love is no longer turning inward, but becomes an external project. How to become good enough, attractive enough, and right to be chosen by others. You begin to live like an actor in your own life, constantly adjusting expressions, words, and reactions to fit the gaze around you. Over time, you no longer feel that you are living, but rather that you are maintaining a role. Imagine the persona as a mirror covered with a thin layer of mist. You look into it every day, adjusting each detail so the reflection becomes more perfect. But the more you focus on that layer of mist, the more you forget that behind it is a real face you have not clearly seen for a long time. Self-love, in the common sense, is merely wiping the outer mist so others can see you more clearly. But in Jung's view, self-love is turning away from that mirror for a moment to touch your real face, even when it is imperfect, not beautiful, and not easily accepted. A woman once shared that she was always described as sweet and easy to be around. She knew how to listen, never reacted too strongly, and always maintained a gentle attitude in every situation. Relationships came to her quite easily, but they also ended in the same way. Her partners said they did not truly understand her, or feel there was an invisible distance they could not reach. What she did not realize was that for many years, she had been loving her persona, loving that sweet version, nurturing it, protecting it, while never truly returning to the real emotions she always hid: anger, hurt, and the need to be deeply heard. As a result, those who came into her life could only connect with the mask, never with the real person beneath. This is precisely what Jung pointed out. When you have not separated yourself from the persona, you cannot love yourself because you have never actually met yourself. You are only maintaining an image, And any love that comes to you at that point will pass through that image, never touching your essence. That is why many people, even when loved, still feel lonely. Not because they lack love, but because the love they receive is not meant for who they truly are. Therefore, self-love, in the Jungian sense, is not about becoming better in others' eyes, but about reclaiming the energy you have invested in the persona. It is accepting that there are parts of you that do not fit social expectations, are not easy to love, and may even cause others to leave. Yet the paradox is this: only when you stop trying to become an image do you begin to become a person. And only then does love have a chance to truly reach you. Jung once wrote, "Until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life, and you will call it fate." When you have not recognized unconscious structures like the persona, you will continue to live through them unknowingly and call it destiny. You will keep attracting relationships that reflect the mask you wear and wonder why everything repeats. But when you begin to see your persona, to recognize how you have adjusted yourself to be loved, a subtle shift occurs. You no longer need to be loved in the old way. Self-love, then, is not a feeling, but an inner honesty. It is the ability to stand before yourself without performing. It is daring to say, "This is me," without adding, subtracting, or editing to fit anyone. And that honesty creates a very different kind of energy. Not loud, not pleading, but carrying its own gravity. It is like a deep current rather than a shimmering surface. It does not need to attract attention, yet anyone who touches it can feel its depth. What needs to be understood is that attracting the right person is not a reward that comes after you become perfect, but a natural consequence when your inner structure changes, when you no longer unconsciously adjust yourself to fit external perceptions. You also change the way you signal yourself to the world. Others no longer sense in you a longing to be loved, but a state of inner fullness. And that state becomes an invisible filter. Those who seek someone easy to control or please will naturally fall away, while those capable of deep connection will remain. You do not need to try to choose the right person, because when you stop pretending to be someone else, you also stop creating space for misaligned relationships to exist. At the deepest level, attracting the right person is not about finding them, but about no longer losing yourself to keep anyone. But when the mask begins to be seen, when you no longer confuse who you are with the image you perform, a deeper question naturally arises. If before you attracted love through the persona, what were you truly attracting? And the answer doesn't lie in others, but in the empty spaces within you, the parts that have not been recognized or embraced. Because in Carl Jung's psychological world, we do not meet the people we want. We meet the people who reflect our inner state. And this is where the next idea begins to unfold. When you do not love yourself, you do not attract love. You attract reflections of what your inner self lacks. Number 2, projection and the inner void. When you do not yet love yourself, you attract those who reflect your inner lack. Some relationships begin with an intensity so strong that you believe you have met the right person, not because you have carefully considered or truly understood them, but because there is an almost unnameable pull, a sense of familiarity so deep it feels as though it needs no explanation. Yet what few realize is this: that sense of familiarity does not come from the other person, but from the structure of your own inner world. From the perspective of Carl Jung, we do not love a person directly. We love through what that person activates within us. And it is precisely this mechanism that gives rise to projection. When you see in another what in fact belongs to you, but has not yet been recognized, accepted, or fully lived. A person who enters love from a state of disconnection from themselves is not seeking a meeting, but seeking validation. They do not only want to be loved, but they also want proof that they are worthy of love. And in that state, they are drawn toward those who can awaken that very hidden need. Not because that person is truly compatible, but because they create an experience that feels deeply right in relation to what already exists within the psyche. Imagine a woman who carries within her a quiet sense that she is not truly important. On the surface, she may appear strong and independent, yet beneath that lies an unspoken need to be prioritized, to be chosen. When she encounters an inconsistent man, sometimes close, sometimes distant, she does not leave. She is held there by that very instability. Not because she cannot see the problem, but because she is unconsciously stepping into a familiar experience, striving to become important enough in the eyes of another. Here, what must be seen is not the behavior of the other person, but her inner response. That response is the key, because it reveals an unresolved part of her that is being activated. Projection does not create emotion. It merely brings to the surface what has already been there, using an external figure as its medium. This mechanism not only appears in painful relationships, but also in moments of intense attraction. A highly self-controlled person who rarely allows themselves to express freely will often feel drawn to those who are spontaneous, emotional, and unpredictable. They see something captivating in the other, but in truth, it is a part of their own energy that has been repressed. And without recognizing this, they unconsciously assign value to the other person, rather than integrating that part back into themselves. Carl Jung once wrote, "Everything that irritates us about others can lead us to an understanding of ourselves." This applies not only to what disturbs you, but also to what attracts you. Every strong reaction, whether positive or negative, is a signal that something within you is asking to be seen. The issue is not that projection exists, but whether you are aware of it. When you are not, you believe your feelings originate entirely from the other person, and from there, you begin to expect that they must change for you to feel whole. But when you begin to observe instead of react, a subtle shift takes place. You are no longer carried away by emotion, but begin to understand its source. The moment you can pause and ask, "What within me is being activated?" you step out of the unconscious. You no longer see the relationship as a story about the other person, but as a doorway into yourself. And from that point, love is no longer a place where you seek completion, but a space where you recognize and reclaim the parts of yourself that were once projected outward. When you no longer need others to carry what belongs to you, the way you connect begins to change. You are no longer pulled by overwhelming intensity, no longer confusing familiarity with compatibility. Instead, you begin to see more clearly, choose more consciously, and remain present in relationships with a steadier foundation. And from that inner shift, the relationships you enter begin to change as well. Not because you are trying harder to choose the right person, but because you no longer perceive the world through the lens of unrecognized parts. When the way you see changes, what you see changes. And that is the point where love begins to become a true meeting, rather than an unconscious reflection. At the very moment you begin to realize that your emotions do not entirely come from another person, but are reflections of what's happening within you, you may feel a brief pause. Not because you found the answer, but because for the first time, you are no longer viewing the story as what they did to me, but are beginning to ask, what within me is being called forward? And if you've ever been in that moment, where things are no longer clearly black and white, where you begin to see yourself in what you once blamed on others, then pause for a moment and share. There's no need to be perfect, no need to articulate it flawlessly, only to be honest. What you've come to recognize about yourself through a relationship may be a belief that you never named, an emotion you have long avoided, or a pattern you've only just begun to see. Speaking not only helps you understand yourself more clearly, It may also become a mirror for someone else to begin recognizing themselves. Recognizing the mechanism of projection helps you understand that your emotions do not entirely originate from others. But understanding alone is not enough. Because even when you are aware that you are seeing yourself in another, you may continue to repeat the same kinds of relationships, the same feelings, the same endings. This happens because, deeper than projection, there exists a more enduring structure within the psyche. Patterns that were formed early on and quietly shape the way you love without your awareness. Number 3. Repetition of toxic patterns. The role of the unconscious. When you do not yet love yourself, you repeat the same toxic relationship patterns. No one enters love with a completely free psyche. Each person carries within them invisible imprints from the past, experiences that seem to have passed, but in truth, continue to live quietly in the way we choose, the way we react, and the way we attach. There are memories no longer held as clear images, yet they persist as familiar emotional states. And it is these familiar emotions, not rational thought, that guide us to repeat the same kinds of relationships again and again. You may change the person you love, but if your inner structure remains the same, the experience will simply repeat itself in a different form. The old person may leave, but the old feeling remains. The feeling of having to try to be loved, the anxiety when the other becomes silent, and the sense that you must hold a relationship together through sacrifice. These feelings do not come from the present. They arise from a deeper place, where beliefs about love were formed very early on. Carl Jung once wrote, "Until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life, and you will call it fate." And nothing resembles fate more than repeatedly encountering the same type of person, reliving the same kind of hurt, even as you try to change things on the surface. What you may not yet see is this. You are not only choosing a person, you are choosing a familiar experience for your nervous system. Some grew up in environments where love was always conditional. They were acknowledged only when they did things right, and noticed only when they were good enough, capable enough, or not a burden. Over time, these experiences form an implicit belief. Love is something to be earned, not something that naturally exists. And when they enter adult relationships, they do not seek a peaceful connection. They are drawn to situations that require effort, proof, and waiting. Not because they desire pain, but because it feels familiar. Consider Emily, a successful and independent woman who's fully capable of sustaining her own life. Yet in love, she repeatedly finds herself in relationships with emotionally unavailable men. They arrive quickly, create a sense of closeness, then gradually withdraw as things begin to deepen. Emily does not lack options, yet she's consistently drawn to the same type. Each time, she asks herself, "Why do I always meet people who are not ready?" The question appears directed outward, but the answer lies within. When she looks back, Emily realizes something. Her father was a good man, but emotionally absent. He didn't harm her in any obvious way, yet he was never truly present. And throughout her childhood, she learned not to ask for too much, not to express too much, and to constantly strive to be worthy of the limited attention she received. That experience did not disappear. It became a pattern she continues to repeat in love. Another example is Daniel, who is repeatedly drawn into relationships where he becomes the rescuer. He is attracted to women who carry deep wounds, who need support, who need to be held up. At first, he feels valuable in being able to bring them stability. But over time, he becomes exhausted. He feels that he is carrying too much, while his own needs remain unseen. When he reflects, Daniel recognizes that his mother was emotionally fragile. As a child, he became accustomed to being stronger, more understanding, and receiving emotional support from her. And unconsciously, he carries that role into his adult relationships. He does not only love the other person, he reenacts an old role, hoping that this time he will do it better, that he will save them, and in doing so, save a part of himself. Patterns like these do not disappear with time. They exist like pathways in the mind. The more they travel, the easier it is to return to them. And what makes them powerful is not their existence, but the fact that you do not realize you are walking along them. There is a deep paradox in love. What feels very right at the beginning can sometimes be the clearest sign that an old pattern is being activated. Because your psychological system does not seek what is best, it seeks what is most familiar. And if the familiar is tied to pain, you will continue to repeat that pain until you become conscious enough to see it. Self-love at this level is not about becoming stronger or more confident. It begins with recognizing what is repeating within you. You begin to see the similarities across relationships that once seemed different. You realize that the issue does not lie in each person, but in how you enter the relationship from the very beginning. More importantly, you begin to allow yourself to experience what is unfamiliar. You no longer rush into intense connections. You are no longer drawn to what demands excessive effort. Instead, you learn to stay with what is calmer and clearer, even if at first it feels dull, as though it lacks the familiar spark. This is a subtle shift. You do not change the external world. You change the way you respond to it. And from that shift, the relationships you enter begin to change. Oh well, freedom in this context is not that you will never again meet unsuitable people. Freedom is recognizing the pattern at its very beginning and having the capacity not to step into it. You are no longer pulled by what feels familiar. You begin to choose from clarity rather than repetition. And when that happens, the cycle ends. Not because you have found a perfect person, but because you are no longer the same person who needed those relationships to validate an outdated belief. That is the moment you begin to live, no longer directed by the past. That is when love ceases to be a place where you repeat pain and becomes a space where you are present as a version of yourself, freed from what once bound you. And as you begin to recognize the patterns repeating within you and gradually separate from them, a subtle transformation takes place. You are no longer carried away by what feels familiar, nor drawn to what once hurt you. And within that inner shift, the outer world seems to respond differently. Encounters no longer feel repetitive, but begin to carry a different quality, as though things are slowly aligning according to a deeper order you had never noticed before. When you love yourself deeply enough, the right person appears as a natural consequence. There is a very strange moment in a person's journey of growth when they are no longer overly concerned with finding the right person, yet begin to meet the right people almost effortlessly. Not because they have become luckier, nor because the world has suddenly become easier, but because something within them has changed. A subtle shift, yet deep enough to transform the way they step into life and the way life responds to them. Many people, upon hearing this, tend to think of it as a kind of fate, a random arrangement of the universe. But when viewed through the lens of depth psychology, especially from the perspective of Carl Jung, a different explanation emerges. Not every encounter is random. There are meetings that carry a meaningful coincidence, where the inner world and the outer world seem to align in a way that cannot be explained by ordinary logic. Jung called this phenomenon synchronicity. To understand this, one must begin with something very simple, yet often overlooked. You do not only live in the external world, you also live in the way you experience that world. And the way you experience it is not always the same. There are periods when you move through life from a place of lack, with a need to be filled, with a quiet longing to be seen, acknowledged, and loved. In that state, every choice, every encounter, every connection is colored by that need. But there comes a time, not suddenly, but as the result of many moments of facing yourself, of letting go of what no longer fits, of choosing to stay with yourself instead of chasing a relationship. At that point, you begin to feel a different state. You are no longer searching for someone to complete you. You no longer enter an encounter with the question, will this person choose me? But instead with a quiet presence. Am I being myself at this moment? This state creates a shift you cannot immediately see but can clearly feel when you look back. You begin to show up in places you never thought of before. You start talking to people you might once have overlooked, and in moments that seem entirely ordinary, a conversation, a chance meeting, a glance, a light connection, something carries a very different sense of rightness, not an intensity that makes you lose control. Not an attraction that demands effort, but a recognition, a sense of familiarity without anxiety, a peace that is not dull. You do not need to prove yourself. You do not need to adjust yourself. You do not need to guess what the other person is thinking. You simply need to be there, and that is enough. Number 4, synchronicity and meeting the right person. There is a story about Sophie, a woman who had gone through many relationships before realizing that the problem was not that she had not met the right person, but that she always entered love with a quiet fear. The fear of not being chosen. For years, she changed many things on the surface, from the way she communicated, to how she expressed emotions, to how she chose her partners. But only when she stopped, truly stopped, not to search for someone else, but to understand herself, did things begin to change. One afternoon, in a photography class she joined simply out of interest, she met Ethan. There was no arrangement, no plan. They began with a very simple conversation about light and angles. But what caught Sophie's attention was not that Ethan was particularly interesting, but how she felt in his presence. She did not feel the need to try. She did not feel the need to impress. She did not feel the need to hold the conversation together. Everything unfolded so naturally that there was almost no effort. If this had been Sophie a few years earlier, she might not have recognized this as something special, because she was used to strong emotions, intense beginnings, and the kind of excitement that makes the heart race. But now, she realized that what she was feeling was not the absence of emotion, but the presence of a different kind of connection. One that did not activate fear but allowed her to be herself. This is where synchronicity becomes clear. Not in the fact that two people happen to meet, but in the fact that they meet at a moment when both have become versions of themselves capable of recognizing each other. If Sophie had still been in her old state, she might not have entered that class. Or if she had, she would not have felt drawn to someone like Ethan. Not because he was not right for her, but because she was not in a state to recognize that alignment. Jung once said, "Synchronicity is an ever-present reality for those who have eyes to see." This does not mean that life suddenly becomes more magical when you change. It means you begin to see connections you could not previously recognize because you were not in the state to perceive them. When you love yourself deeply enough, you no longer try to force things to happen. You no longer search from a place of lack. You no longer place expectations on others to fill what is empty within you. And because of that, you no longer distort what is unfolding before you. You see more clearly. You feel more clearly. And you allow what is truly aligned to have the space to appear. The right person, therefore, is not a reward life gives you after you become good enough. Nor is it the person who creates the strongest emotional pull, but the one who does not trigger your old wounds as a familiar reflex. In their presence, you do not need to become better to be kept. You do not need to guess or adjust yourself to maintain the connection. You can be fully present with all your imperfections, without carrying the fear of being left. That relationship is not built on pursuit or testing, but on clarity and stability, where neither of you tries to complete the other, but simply recognizes each other in a state of inner fullness. And when that happens, you realize something very simple, yet transformative, in how you see love. You don't need to go out and find the right person. You only need to become the person who can meet them. But at this point, an important question remains open. If all these changes originate from within, how do you actually step into that process of transformation in a sustainable way? Because understanding that you need to change is one thing, but living differently every day is something entirely else. And it's precisely here that love is no longer an idea, but becomes a practice. A process you must consciously choose and maintain, not once, but many times within your own life. Number 5, practicing self-love, a profound transformation from within. Self-love does not come from weekend spa sessions or affirmation cards placed on a mirror. Those things may feel pleasant and may offer moments of comfort, but they are not powerful enough to reach the deepest layers of transformation. True self-love is an inner act, a quiet revolution within you, where every abandoned part is named, heard, and integrated. From Carl Jung's perspective, self-love has never been defined by comfort or fleeting positive emotions. On the contrary, it is an inner journey that requires deep courage because it begins with facing the parts within that we tend to avoid. Wounds, repressed needs, and emotions that were once denied or attempted to be repaired through others. Self-love, therefore, is not an emotional state, but a repeated practice. It is the choice to return to yourself each day, sometimes quietly, sometimes with great difficulty. But through that repetition, a new inner structure slowly takes shape. One of the clearest signs of not truly loving oneself is not a lack of confidence, but the inability to set boundaries. When someone knows that something is hurting them yet continues to stay, continues to remain silent out of fear of losing a relationship, their self-worth has already been placed below the presence of another. The inability to say no is not merely a communication issue. It is an implicit message sent into the unconscious that one's feelings are not important enough to be protected. Over time, this becomes a belief that one must endure to be loved. However, setting boundaries is not about shutting oneself off or pushing others away. It is how a person affirms their own presence in their own life. When someone can say, "This does not work for me," they are not only protecting their emotions, they are redefining their place within the relationship. Each time they choose to speak instead of remain silent, to refuse instead of endure, they stop denying themselves. And from these seemingly small moments, a deep shift begins. Alongside boundary setting is the capacity to return inward and observe one's inner life with honesty. Within every person exists a part that does not want to be seen. The vulnerable part, the wounded part, the longing that was once suppressed to be accepted, what Jung referred to as the shadow. What is important is that the shadow does not disappear when denied. It continues to operate from behind, influencing emotions, behaviors, and even choices in love. For this reason, self-love cannot stop at being kind to yourself. It must go further. It must include the courage to illuminate what has never been acknowledged. One of the most direct ways to do this is through writing. When a person begins to record their negative emotions honestly, without rationalizing, without justifying, they are transforming unconscious reactions into something that can be seen. Writing is not meant to control emotion, but to understand it. When feelings of abandonment, jealousy, or anger are placed onto paper, they are no longer vague reactions, but signals that can be decoded. And in that process, one gradually realizes that one's responses do not come solely from the present, but from the resonance of unresolved past experiences. Here, another important practice emerges: inner dialogue. Instead of asking outward questions, such as, "Why didn't that person do this for me?" one begins to return to a deeper question: "What is it that I need that I have not yet given to myself?" When a person can recognize and meet their own emotional needs, they're no longer dependent on others to feel whole. This is not isolation. It is a psychological maturity where love is no longer a place to compensate for lack, but a meeting between two individuals who can each stand on their own. This transformation does not occur through grand changes, but through small, consistent actions. A person chooses not to wait for an ambiguous message, chooses not to explain themselves to those who have no intention of understanding, chooses to leave places where they must shrink themselves. These actions may be seen as small, but they carry deep symbolic weight because they send a clear signal that one no longer depends on external validation to feel worthy. And through the repetition of these choices, a new self gradually takes form. At its deepest level, self-love is built upon a foundational belief that a person is worthy of unconditional love, not because they have become perfect, but because their worth does not need to be proven through endurance or sacrifice. When this belief is established, the way a person enters love changes. They no longer seek recognition. They simply show up as themselves. They no longer try to hold someone in place, but have the clarity to know who truly aligns. And when one goes deeply enough into this journey, they begin to realize that the transformation is not only in relationships, but in the very way they exist in the world. They no longer repeat old roles and no longer get pulled into familiar cycles. Instead, they live with a steadier presence, knowing who they are, what they need, and what they are worthy of. Though this journey is not easy, though there will be moments of doubt and loneliness, if they continue returning to themselves, step by step, they will reach what Jung called the self, where light and shadow are no longer in opposition, but coexist within a deeper wholeness. And then, after all the cycles of emotion, the misdirected love, and the moments of asking, "Why me?" you may come to realize something quiet. The search for love never truly began with another person. It always began with the way you return to yourself. When you stop trying to become a version that is easy to love, when you dare to remain your imperfect parts without hiding or fixing them for acceptance, a deep shift takes place. You no longer enter love with the fear of losing, but with the calm of someone who no longer abandons themselves. And from that point, the right person is no longer a distant dream or a reward granted by life. They appear as a natural alignment. The journey may not be easy. There will be days of doubt, moments of loneliness, and times when you are tempted to return to what is familiar, even when you know it no longer fits. But if you continue choosing yourself, and continue staying with yourself in the most honest way you can, you will gradually arrive at a state Jung once pointed toward, where a person no longer seeks love to become whole, but lives as someone already whole, and therefore meets love as a reflection of that wholeness.